So when Andy asked me to come here, he wanted me to share some of the things that we're seeing going on that have caused us to look twice, that have caused us to think again about what's going on in the media and tech world and what it means for many of the companies that are here. So let's start with the user. The prevailing wisdom is that consumer time is finite and that we're actually reaching the upper limits of places where we can find some other application, some other experience that consumers will spend time with. And the idea is that there must be a zero-sum game. So we took a deep dive. We looked at, through consumer research and media metrics and usage, and we found that in fact, consumer time and attention is not a zero-sum game. And in fact, when you look at the analysis, what you see is that consumers are actually packing 30 hours into a 24-hour day. Now first, the bad news. They're only working about 5 hours of those days. They're spending another hour at work, goofing off, going online, watching videos, social networks. Now, what's also fascinating is they're spending 5 hours a day on television. Yes, the average American watches 35 hours a week of television. And so if anybody in this room ever says, I don't watch television anymore, recognize we're not average. There's an hour of that TV time is dedicated, and the other 5 hours of that, the other 4 hours of that is actually multitasked. And so when you look across this entire day, you see there's lots and lots of opportunities. And a neat way to look at this is to take it apart into 15-minute moments. There's 120 15-minute moments, and we have to assume that the amount of time that they're sleeping is pretty much fixed, although there are a lot of people who are sleeping less so they can watch more television. But consumers otherwise are mixing and matching these times in their days. And there are lots of opportunities. And if you can just get one of these 15-minute moments, it's amazing. You can build a large business. In fact, think of the number of businesses that have been built on less than 5 minutes of attention each day. And these are billion-dollar businesses that have all reached web scale less than 5 minutes a day. And so part of the trick in capturing people's attention is looking at what they're doing while they're doing something else. A lot of the applications in cars isn't just going to be about navigation and news. A lot of it's going to be about entertainment. Another thing is trying to make those points in somebody's life where they're unpleasant, when they're waiting for a subway, the ability to either go shopping or to find some sort of entertainment. And so overall, we're going to find lots and lots of opportunities to engage with consumers in other parts of their day. Now, when we're thinking about attention, we now understand about attention, but whose attention are we trying to capture? There's been a lot of celebration and a lot of expectation around the next 4 billion people that are going to come online around the world. And those numbers, in addition to the people, the 2 or so billion that are online, yes, they're very exciting. But we also took a deep dive here. And sadly, the great majority of those people are earning less than $2 a day. So these people are not going to be signing up for Netflix. They're not going to be buying the iPhone 8. These people are going to have a fundamentally different set of needs. And it really raises the question about how are we going to serve them? And are the companies that are going to serve them the ones that are here in this room, or are there going to be an entirely new set of companies? So when you look at this all the way to the left, these people are making less than $1 a day. And the most meaningful thing we can do is subsidize these people and give them access to technology and entertainment in a way that's consistent with their ability to pay and their culture. In the middle, we see those people that startups would call onboarders. And these are people that one way or the other we need to serve them, but they're not going to be served with the same set of products. And in a lot of cases, they're not going to be served by the same sets of companies. So we see businesses like M-Pesa for payments or ShowMe for cell phones. Somebody's going to make very cheap products and products that are actually geared to these users. And all the way on the right, we see those users that we really have to optimize. These are the people that are today the core. And part of the way in which we're going to be able to grow our business with them is by finding better ways to market, more selling, better engagement. Also, a lot of it is going to be about replacement cycles. And even with those optimization countries and consumers, people get surprised. In this case, and this chart shows the replacement cycles versus price. And the assumption has been that as devices get cheaper, the functionality increases, that people will trade out their devices more quickly. Even Apple got surprised here. The expectation of people trading out their iPads, actually it went the other way. The iPad cycle looks more like the PCs. And on the other side, so many people have talked about the end of the game console, and actually consumers are trading up much more quickly. They're showing that their priority is having the latest game console and playing the latest game. So when we look at these markets we're optimizing, we need to think about what's the most meaningful way of looking at how we're optimizing and what we're optimizing. And so the most important way to look at these markets is how much revenue per user is each of the companies able to achieve. We've looked at, across the entire consumer universe, all of the major companies. And I recognize this is an eye chart, and I'll go through some of the detail on it, but all of these charts will be on our site and on SlideShare. Our site is activate.com. But you can see that there's a wide array of average revenue per year for each of these companies. All the way on the left, you see the cable guys and the broadband and television guys. All the way on the right, we see companies like WhatsApp, which are barely earning any revenue. So let me go through each of these quickly. First of all, in media and tech subscriptions, once again, you've got, on the left-hand side, you've got the television and broadband guys. But what's fascinating is you see Netflix over on the right, and you see how much more headroom Netflix is going to have ahead. Then let's look at commerce. Yes, Amazon has more revenue per user than anybody else. And trailing way behind are eBay and Alibaba. The difference, though, may come down to profitability per user, since neither eBay nor Alibaba have any shipping costs or any costs of inventory. Then we can look at entertainment. Here, Disney's the champion. And part of the reason is because they have more to optimize. They have cable networks, they have theme parks, they have consumer products, and of course, the most important, sports. But this is also an interesting place, which is he who monetizes the best gets to own the rest. Disney has been able, because of their ability to monetize, they've been able to go out and buy the other hit factories. They've been able to buy Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Henson, which is the Muppets. And then let's look at consumer web, the companies that are based on advertising. Once again, it's fascinating to see. Google is way, way up at the top of the pack. And what's fascinating is that Facebook and Yahoo are neck and neck. And then you see a number of the other companies, Twitter and Pandora, which are just emerging. You can see how far they have to go. And yet, at the same time, the challenge that they're going to face in terms of catching up with some of the other companies. So in terms of understanding where revenue is going to come from and what are we going to optimize, we also need to look at the strategies of each of these companies. And there is a sense that we look at and we see that the major companies may not have a strategy, that they see something come along and they feel like they have to own it. What I'm going to show you is that actually these companies have to exist and participate in many more layers of the stack in order to be a player. But the sense is, well, okay, they're out buying, they're finding new business to be in, and does it really make sense? And in fact, the question is whether or not their search for a new business looks like this one for VR headsets. So first, Facebook buys Oculus Rift for over $3 billion. Google creates something out of cardboard. Already Sony has their device and for fanboys, and it just looks like everybody's chasing the same thing. But the logic comes down to looking at each of these major layers. And in the past, a company that participated in any one of these layers, we would have considered them to be a formidable company. Now, in an unprecedented way, many of the companies have to be in the device layer, in the applications, in the software layer, in the content layer, and on all of the other different parts of the layers that are emerging. We looked at this across all of the major companies, once again an eye chart, but what is noticeable is all of the differences between these companies in terms of, you see a number, whether it's Apple all the way to Disney to Google and Microsoft and to Tencent. What's fascinating is Disney is not participating in many of the layers, but they're striking strong alliances. They've got partnerships, so they are participating, just not owning. Google and Microsoft, everybody wonders why so many acquisitions, why so many new builds, and you begin to see they are in fact populating each of these layers. And then what's surprising is we can look at a company like Tencent that most people would have thought of historically being in the game business, but they've got a payment layer, they've got even a storage layer, and certainly a messaging layer. And so the question becomes, well, there are a bunch of other companies out there that are independent, that are not part of these. And you can almost assume that one way or another, each of these companies is going to end up being part of one of those larger businesses, or is going to merge with others in this stack. And you'll see there are a number of areas where they're going to end up being very lonely. If they're not doing that, in other cases, they may not make it on their own. But what this also merges into is, what are the new networks? What happens if we add a row? What if happens if we add a new area, a new layer that everybody's not participating in already? Huge amount of talk about the Internet of Things and what it's going to mean for the existing companies. This portrays a number of the companies that are intending to produce or creating today devices that are on a person. So it's not just about the next smartwatch. It's not just about the next device that's going to be on around somebody's eyes. It's also around the entire network of those devices and those sensors as they relate to each other. This shows you all of the devices that are going to be around that person, all of the things. Now, you'll notice that many of these companies are not the same companies that were on those previous stacks. And when you put this all together, it shows you what an incredibly complex network this is going to be, and why companies like Google and others are going to be entering into these businesses, because this is in fact a new network area that they're going to want to participate in. There is a caution though here, which is that we have to be careful about trying to put the internet and entertainment into every device, because there's a long history of creating devices that people frankly just don't want. The real lessons come from the internet fridge. So over the last 15 years, every company has tried to create an internet fridge. We thought there was going to be applications, we thought there was going to be entertainment, and it hasn't happened anywhere. And in fact, these industries have a long history of creating content, of creating applications and experiences that nobody wants. And going forward, each of the different content and entertainment devices and experiences really needs to be engineered to serve the new reality of attention. Nowhere is this more evident in what's happening with formats. Long-form formats where somebody is able to read an article or a piece and see all of the different pieces of it with multimedia. This is The Verge's review of the PlayStation. But it also carries through to long-form journalism. This is The Guardian's story about the NSA and about Snowden. And this was providing the narrative of each of the individual reporters and how they found out about it. Today, we have a whole new set of formats, and content companies need to be able to create experiences that are specifically for these formats. It's not about promotion. It's about recognizing these are entirely new forms of media, and we're going to need to create content for each of them. And you can't talk about missing the next wave and what's going to happen without talking what is going to happen in terms of social. We're 10 years into the social phenomenon, and one of the interesting things that we're seeing coming up is fan culture. And the numbers on fan culture are astounding. So when we took a look at this, we saw that for a popular show like Glee, 110 hours of programming were created for television. Fans have created over 500,000 hours of programming. So there are fans who've looked at these shows and thought there must be something more. There must be more to these characters. There must be more to the mythology, more to the story. And they've created themselves. They've created videos, they've created fan fiction, they've created art. And this is not UGC. This is very well produced, well created, and they're sharing it across all of the major social platforms. And it's also not staying out in the periphery. In fact, these are becoming very mainstream. One example of this is a book that I'm sure every man in this room has read, 50 Shades of Grey. Phenomenal success, and I mean undisputed success, and about to become a huge movie. But few people know it was actually based on fan fiction around the Twilight series. And Twilight, also very popular starting with young girls and then young women. And E.L. James, the author, created a fan fiction story just changing the names of each of the major characters in Twilight. So Jacob and Bella and Edward became Chris and Annie and Jose Luis. So when you look across the whole fan fiction world, what content companies and digital media companies can't ignore it. This is something that's going to come into the mainstream. They can't start asking these people to take down their product, to take down their creation, because they've spent hundreds of hours. And it is going to influence how content gets created and who gets to create it. So looking at what's happening at the entire media and tech world, it's a very exciting moment. I'm excited about what we're seeing, new formats, new ways of intention, a whole new audience that's going to be coming online, and new ways in which we can monetize users. And I'm looking forward to hearing more over the next couple of days. All of these slides are on our site, and over the next year, we'll be updating them as we get more information and providing more to you. So thank you.